In my episode 183 and 221, I chose one particular region of Korea, Jeju Island and Busan City more specifically, and explored spooky stories regarding its historic events and landmarks. If you missed them, by the way, you'll find the links in the description. For this episode, I'm taking up the same thread, and we are going to take a little trip to Incheon. Located west to Seoul, Incheon is the second biggest port after Busan City. Due to its proximity to the capital and China, one of the biggest trade partners, Incheon has been always strategically important. It became a metropolitan city since 1981, meaning it is its own independent administrative district. It has about 3 million population, and its area includes various islands dotted on the West Sea. For most visitors from the outside world, the name Incheon should be most familiar as where the main international airport to Korea is located. The Incheon International Airport opened in 2001 on Yeongjong-do, an island off the mainland Incheon. In 2024, about 70 million passengers used the airport. Then as now, Incheon played the role of the first place where foreign influences landed. At the end of 19th century, when Joseon dynasty, that was dubbed as the Hermit Nation, was forced to open its door to the outer world, it was in Incheon the first international trade and communities took place. For that reason, the city has a claim in quite a few areas as the very first in Korea, such as the first modern railway that linked to Seoul, or the first high-speed motorway, as well as the first hotel, cinema, modern school, and churches. For that reason, the old town Incheon is one of few places in Korea where the buildings and mood of the early 20th century still survive. Incheon also played a crucial role during the Korean War. Korean War broke on 25th June 1950, and by September, almost entire Korean peninsula was taken by the North Korean force. General MacArthur, who was the top commander of the U.S. force, planned to cut the enemy-occupied territory at its waist rather than to push back from the front line, basically a version of D-Day of World War II. Incheon was the chosen location for its complex coastline and proximity to Seoul. This super-secretive plot, dubbed Operation Chromite, was the most crucial battle of the 3-year-long war, and it turned the tide in favor of South Korea and its allies. The Battle of Incheon might be by now a distant memory, but Incheon has some islands that faces North Korean water. Its northernmost island, such as Baekneung-do or Yeonpyeong-do, can still suffer military clash when the tension between two Koreas rise. Incheon today faces not a small number of issues. By the nature of major port town with a lot of foot traffic and foreign population, it suffers a rather high rate of hard crimes. Its backward-looking politics hasn't quite got rid of corruptions and short-sighted policies. The gap is growing between the crumbling old town and the spanking modern new town developments such as Songdo. Also, the proximity to the ever-expanding and ever-consuming Seoul threatens Incheon to turn into yet another satellite town. Despite of it all, there's no denying Incheon always has played a very distinctive role in history and still is a very dynamic and ever-evolving city. The stories I'm going to read today will reflect bits from the characters and history of this port town. So, here are 5 allegedly true spooky stories from Incheon. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by a host, Anthony. It's from when I was 8. My family used to live in a well-known slum in Incheon. We used to call such a slum 달동네, translated literally into a moon town. Typically poor slums formed over steep slopes of hills and mountains where the real estate was cheap, and hence rather a poetic name was given because such slum quarters tended to be so high up, nearer to the moon. And my home was particularly small and particularly high up even in that moon town. I admit the life there would be unimaginable by today's standard, but just as the name Moontown implied, the unobstructed view was nothing like the modern life surrounded by tall buildings, and especially on nights of the full moon, we were the first to be graced by its gentle light. It was one summer night. I was on the errand to buy a watermelon on sale from a corner shop. The full moon was up and the sky was clear. I was happily walking up the hill, swaying the heavy watermelon back and forth. But before I reached home, I saw a ball of light just as big as the full moon, falling from the sky to the lower town where the factory and commercial district located. It was as fast as a shooting star. I couldn't determine exactly where it fell, but after several flickering flashes, it disappeared. Following day, I still couldn't shake off the weird phenomenon that I witnessed. After school, I went to the part of the town I thought the ball of light could have landed. And what I found there was... In the commercial district was a bike shop, rather infamous in the town as the place where all the stolen and shady goods were traded away. And that bike shop was now turned into a black hole, all burnt away. There were 2 other shops in the same building, but the bike shop alone was totally decimated. The damage seemed like it must have caused by some sort of explosion, but all the windows were still intact. When the ball of light fell, there was no sound of explosion or big fire. It all could have been just a coincidence, and the destruction of the bike shop had nothing to do with the phenomenon I witnessed. But I can't shake off the feeling it did. What could have been that ball of light? I never witnessed anything like it ever since. It's a story a uni mate told me. Let's call him Young-soo for the sake of the story. Young-soo was 17 in 2002. The whole nation was high with the World Cup games. Not only Korea was hosting the event, but the nation's team reached the quarterfinal for the first time in history. People gathered by hundreds and thousands on any square to watch and cheer for the football game together. That day, Young-soo and friends were among such a crowd. Even after the football game, they had to steam off the excitement all evening long and still couldn't just finish the exciting day, so they decided to go to a 노래방 karaoke bar. They all lived in Incheon, so went to Seoul, where such karaoke bars and bars flourished by the beach. While others went to pick some snacks and drinks at a convenient store, Young-soo first went down to the karaoke bar in the basement of the building. At the counter was an elderly lady watching TV. How much is it for an hour? Young-soo asked. You are a student, aren't you? The old woman said, not even bothering to take her eyes off from the TV screen. Young-soo feared she might turn them away because they were underage, and lied. We are not. To his relief, the old woman didn't probe further, and simply said, 12,000 won. Young-soo put the money on the counter table, but she didn't bother to take them. Young-soo just shrugged and went to a karaoke room. Soon his friends joined, and they had a heck of time, singing, trying to hook up with the girls in the next room, and so on. Following day, back at their school, Young-soo met his friends. "Wasn't yesterday such a fun? Oh, by the way, boys, I paid for the karaoke bar, don't forget," he said.
"What? We didn't go to a karaoke bar, did we?"
others said. "What are you talking about? You even tried to hook up with the girls from the next room," Young-soo insisted. But others flatly denied they ever went to a karaoke bar the day before. Young-soo got so frustrated that he dragged his friends to the karaoke bar after school. They arrived the very building of the night before, but Young-soo was baffled because the building was a ruin and empty. Songdo area at the time going through a huge redevelopment phase, and a whole section was evicted to get rebuilt. The karaoke bar building was sitting in such a section. Young-soo ventured down to the basement level. The layout of the building and the front counter of the karaoke bar was just as he remembered from the night before, except they were all dusty and abandoned. And on the counter table was 12,000 won bill, just as Young-soo left it there. Everybody was baffled, but anyway further ventured into the karaoke room where Young-soo insisted that they occupied. There too was a thick layer of dust everywhere except for one bum mark on the seat that must have belonged to Young-soo. They saw enough and all ran out of there, and Young-soo took the money back on the way out. That night, Young-soo had a dream. The old woman of the karaoke bar appeared and said, "Why did you take the money back? Didn't you have a good time, did you?" Baekneungdo is the most westerly island of Korea, as well as the most northerly in the West Sea. It belongs to Incheon city, but distance-wise is closer to North Korea. It's naturally strategically significant, and there's a large military presence, but there are also beautiful beaches and seascapes. More than 20 years ago, I guess I was in the 5th grade, my uncle's family moved to Baekneungdo due to his work. In the summer, my family visited them there to have a summer holiday on the island. It was a long journey just to get there. I think it took 9 hours on the boat. There was a faster ferry too, but my parents are rather stingy, so... Anyway. On the second day on the island, Uncle took us to Tumunjin Beach. It was behind the military fence and adults had to show their ID just to access, but the beach was beautiful with unusual rock formations. Of course, I had a fabulous time, swam in the sea and took lots of photos too. Back home, I dropped a roll of film to get developed. That was time before digital cameras. When I came to fetch the developed photos, the shop owner looked at me weird and said,
"There's one photo that turned out a bit, strange."
"Really? What's wrong?" I said.
"I have no idea,"
he said. He clearly didn't seem to want to explain it in detail. I just shrugged. It wasn't uncommon that something went wrong with a roll of film, bleached by light, etc., so I expected just one such a case. As I and Mom flipped through the developed photos together back home, we came across this shot of Mom and my younger brother posing in front of the scenic rock formation on the beach. And about the midpoint of the tall rock was a woman nonchalantly standing there. The rock is really tall, and a normal person could not go up there without a climbing gear. Naturally, I got curious and took a closer look, and it looked like she was bleeding from her mouth down to her neck, and her legs were missing below her knees. It left us shocked. Mom claimed it was a bad luck to keep such a photo and burnt it off. But I still clearly remember the woman. Apart from missing legs and dripping blood, she looked perfectly normal. Her hair was neatly ponytailed and was wearing short-sleeved t-shirt and shorts. There was something particularly creepy about her expressionless face, though. Expressionless but somewhat full of anger, while her lips were subtly smirking. This post got some interesting responses from the people who served in the military base on Baekneungdo Island. They read,
By Baekneungdo Island is another smaller island called Wolledo. It now belongs to North Korea, but right after Korean War, South Korean troops occupied it for a while. During that period, there were several instances that North Korean soldiers sneaking onto the island in the middle of the night and killing South Korean soldiers by slitting their throat. I don't know if it's anyway related, but the description of blood dripping around the neck somehow reminded me of that. Or, regarding missing legs, another possibility is she might have been a victim of a mine. During and after the war, a lot of mines were installed to the north side of Baekneungdo, facing North Korea. Unfortunately, when it rains a lot, the mines can be washed down to the beach, and it's not unheard of that some local residents became a victim as they venture around the beach to collect shells. Before we read the next story, we have to take a look at the tragic incident that took place in Incheon. 6:55 p.m., 30th October 1999. A fire started in a 3-storied commercial building in Incheon-dong, Incheon City. The fire first started from the karaoke bar on the basement level. Fortunately, the karaoke bar was under refurbishment and didn't have any clients. The barbecue restaurant on the ground floor could be evacuated quickly too. Even from the billiard room on the top floor, there was no fatality, if many injured by jumping off from the window. Problem was the pub or beer hall on the first floor. In that pub alone, 56 lost their lives. It was a typical case of a corruption, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. The pub didn't meet safety regulations and should not have been in business to start with, but the owner bribed the police and authority and carried on running the place. With a guaranteed blind eye from the authority, the pub sold alcoholic drinks to underage students too, and apparently became famous among teenagers in the area as one spot where they could party. Indeed, on the day of the tragedy, the pub was packed with about 100 people, most of them high school and even some middle school students. The emergency exit was blocked, the front windows could not be opened, and the manager of the pub initially blocked the clients trying to escape, insisting they should pay first. Meanwhile, the main entrance and staircase hall was overwhelmed by toxic smoke and fire, and people in the pub were left trapped. The result was 56 dead and 78 injured. And it remains one of the worst fire disasters in Korea after the Daegu Metro fire and Taeyeongak Hotel fire. It was particularly tragic and shocking because most fatalities were of young teenagers, and because it was deemed as yet another epitome of the social corruption that was demonstrated by the series of high-profile disasters that rocked the country throughout the later half of the 90s. In high school, I had a gang of friends. We were all around typical boys of the time. By all means, no model students. We smoked and drank and didn't work very hard. Probably the only standout thing was one of the gang had the third eye. We experienced all sorts of weird things in relation to him, but this particular story is mostly about another friend of the gang. I'll call him Che for the sake of the story. During one class, Che excused himself that he was urgent and went to the toilet to have a quick smoke break. When he got to the men's room, to his amusement, one cubicle at the end was already occupied, and he could see smoke billowing up from the upper gap. Well, he wasn't the only sneaky bastard after all. Che went into the next cubicle and put a cigarette in his mouth. But damn, his lighter wouldn't work.
"Hey, buddy, can you lend me your lighter?"
Che asked whoever fellow naughty smoker next door. Without any reply, a hand appeared from the bottom gap with a lighter.
"Thanks,"
Che said. He lighted his cig and tossed the lighter back through the bottom gap. After finishing the smoke, he got out of the cubicle and found the next cubicle was already empty, even though Che didn't hear any sound of the mystery body getting out. He must have been in such a hurry, too, that the lighter was still left on the floor. Che put the lighter in his pocket and went back to the classroom. Came the lunchtime. This time, Che was really urgent. He ran to the toilet cubicle and, as his habit went, lighted a cigarette. Oh, but what was this? He felt something flying about his head. A fly? He waved his hand to chase away whatever it was and unwittingly looked up. And there, a black figure. Not a dark shadow, but literally an all-black person was trying to reach down to Che. Che screamed and ran back to us. We of course didn't believe him and just laughed, except for the body with a third eye. He stared at Che for a second and asked, "What the heck have you picked up?" Che first denied that he didn't have anything particular on him, but soon remembered the lighter he pocketed. He pulled it out to show us, and on it was written, "Live." That was the name of the pub that was burnt down a week prior. The friend with the third eye told Che that he'd better put it back wherever he picked it up from. Che was so scared to go back to the toilet by himself, so I accompanied him there, and Che put the lighter back in the last cubicle. And that was that. Che didn't have any more incident about it. For my military service, I was stationed at Incheon International Airport as the part of its security and anti-terror force. As the main gate to Korea, the airport operated 24/7, and naturally we were on duty for 24/7 too. The 1.3-kilometer long and 5-story airport was packed with millions of bustling passengers and staffs. But by midnight, turned into a hollow and eerie space under the dimmed lights.
It's the side of the spanking modern airport that not many people get to see. One other thing that not many people know about is that surprisingly many number of people die at the airport. You may wonder because there has been no major fatal incident at Incheon Airport so far. It has changed a lot now, but when I was stationed there not long after the airport was first opened, there was literally nothing around it, the nearest residential town being good 20 minutes drive away. That meant there was no major hospital anywhere nearby. So when a car accident happened on the long express highway that linked the mainland to the island where the airport's situated, they had no other option but bring the injured to the medical center in the airport. But the medical center there was nowhere near the capacity and capability of a decent general hospital, and many people passed away there before a better medical care could reach them. I myself had no idea for the first 6 months at the airport. Now, the office for the soldiers on duty was situated in the separate building that served public transportations. When the toilet in that building was closed, either for cleaning or repair, the other closest toilet was in the main airport building, and that was right next to the airport medical center. The first time I realized something was going on with that toilet was when I was on a nightly patrol with a senior soldier. As we passed nearby, I wanted to use that toilet, but the senior soldier stopped me. That one should never use it, at night in any case. I of course asked him why, and he simply said in a low voice, "Ghost!" He refused to tell me anything more, claiming that it gave him chills just thinking about it. And I wasn't sure whether he was serious or just joking. A few nights later, I was on patrol with another senior soldier, and when we walked past the toilet in question, I asked him if he knew anything more about it.
"Oh, that. Well, it's not even the news because practically everybody saw or heard something weird there already," he said. Our job as the security soldier was tough. In theory, we were on shifts, but we were constantly short of hand, and often we didn't get much more than 3-4 hours of sleep. After particularly tough 12 weeks of constant duty at one point, I lost 7 kilos. So it happened fairly often that a soldier on night patrol would sneak in a toilet cubicle and catch a quick snooze. Most common pattern of sighting at that toilet by the medical center took place during such a sneaky snooze, that it would be disturbed by a footstep that stops right outside a cubicle or even loud knocks. And when the startled soldier ran out, there was no trace of any person anywhere nearby. It was such a widespread experience that many soldiers tried to avoid using that toilet. But for a certain patrol routine, that was the only toilet available. A soldier on duty could not deviate away from the designated route just to use another toilet either. I had to admit, the toilet by the medical center did feel somewhat damper and chillier, even during the daytime, even though the fittings and interior was exactly identical with other toilets in the airport. Still, I was reluctant to believe such a story could be true, until I myself experienced something weird there. I had to pee there one day, and from my peripheral vision, saw a person looking into the mirror by the sink. I zipped my fly up and turned around, and there was nobody, even though it took less than a second. Spooky accounts only piled up more and more. One soldier saw a face reflected on the polished marble wall there, just the head, without the body. Another soldier had to use the cubicle and was disturbed by loud rattling of the door.
His junior soldier, who was waiting by the toilet door, insisted nobody entered or came out from the toilet all the while. By the time I became a corporal, such a story wasn't even in news, and it all became the grueling part of the military service, not knowing I would end up experiencing something much more scary and hands-on. It was during the period we were particularly short of hand, and we were all exhausted from the relentless schedule. That night, I was out on the nightly patrol with a junior soldier I was particularly friendly with, and we decided to break the rule and steal a snooze in the toilet cubicle together. As explained, the notorious toilet by the medical center was the only option on that route, but really, the desire to sleep trumped over anything at the time. So I took one cubicle, my junior the next door, to have a snooze. I mounted over the toilet seat backwards so that I could lean my head on the water tank. And, of course, I got a sleep paralysis. It's not uncommon to suffer it when one is particularly exhausted, but it was the first time and only time I heard a voice during a sleep paralysis. Come. 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 A teasing, coaxing, slimy voice whispered right to my ear. I got scared and squeezed my voice out to call for my junior in the next cubicle. 철수! 철수! Thankfully, 철수, my junior, replied from the cubicle next door. Before the military service, 철수 was a singer in a rock band, and his clear, resonant voice was unmistakable. I heard him came to my cubicle and shook me by my side to wake me up. As usually the case with a sleep paralysis, the moment I could move again, the panic melted away quickly. I just mumbled, "Oh, thank you," and quickly fell back to sleep again. And as soon as I did, I got another sleep paralysis. Come. Come. With your friend. Come. The same voice said. Did he mean my junior? Was he targeting him too? I panicked and called for 철수 next door once again. This time, he silently came over to my cubicle and tried to pull me up from the toilet seat. But once again, the panic subsided quickly, and I waved 철수 away. Guess I felt a bit ashamed to show my junior soldier my weak side. Stupid or not, but as I said, exhaustion trumped over all else, and I dozed off once again, thinking it couldn't happen again. I was wrong. I got paralyzed once again, and the same slimy voice whispered in my ear. I once again called 철수 for help, and this time I didn't resist when he pulled me out of the seat. I didn't need more to prove it was mad to try to sleep in that damn haunted toilet. I shook myself up and turned around, only to face the cubicle door still latched. Well, of course, I did latch it as anybody would in the toilet cubicle. But then, how did my junior got in here and woke me up 3 times? I ran out. 철수, my junior, was standing by the toilet entrance with a pale face. He said he too heard a voice while he was asleep saying, "Here, here." It was so unpleasant an experience, he got out of the cubicle as soon as he could move again, but didn't dare to wake me up and just waited there till I got out myself. He assured it wasn't he that came to my aid. We later talked about the experience more in detail, and we were sure the voice we heard must have belonged to the same entity. The voice of a grown-up man, slow, slimy, teasing, coaxing, and sly. Until the day I discharged, I never returned to that toilet again. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the little trip to Incheon. I just hope they didn't spook you out too much, especially the story about the Incheon airport. I mean, you'd inevitably go through the airport should you visit Korea from the overseas, and I don't want you to have any anxiety. You will definitely have no problem there, which is well known for its efficient service and modern facilities. I think I'll carry on with the exploration to different regions of Korea in intervals through their spooky regional stories, of course. Do you know any town or region of Korea that interests you? If you ever do let me know. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a big thumbs up and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. Whether you are specifically interested in Korean culture or simply enjoy a bit of weird and scary, you'll enjoy my channel. If you'd support me more directly, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description, and there's also a Super Thanks option here on YouTube for a small donation. Thank you. Until the next, stay safe and take care.